Welcome to Phillip Island, Victoria in Australia. What a setting we have for this great sporting contest, the Little Penguin Sea to Dune race. Nervous moments always as they gather on the beach, the tension mounting, and away they go. There's the defending champion, wearing his familiar navy blue and white, great waddling style. Another pre-race favourite though, losing touch with the pack. Maybe that's why. A few too many fish in the day's feeding. There's a familiar face, Skip McIntyre, 8 times a champion back in the 90s, a very successful coach now, keeping a keen eye on proceedings. This the leading group, 1 or 2 still able to put on a show for the camera, others just ploughing straight over it. Some resorting to shortcuts. Sad that cheating has crept into this beautiful sport. The judges will have a look at that. But up at the front, the pace is relentless, closing in on those sand dunes that will offer a bed for the night. The fatigue starting to tell. Who's got the finishing kick up on the outside? What a turn of pace from that one, whichever one it is. No answer from the rest, and he takes victory. What a win. There we are, into the Burrow, building an extension with his winnings, and back tomorrow to try and defend his title here on Phillip Island.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to Live Penguin TV. My name is Steven. I'm going to be your host for the night. And joining me, we also have Michael. Come in and say hello, Michael.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Penguin Live TV. Nice to see you all tuning in. I'll be looking at the YouTube and Facebook for all your Penguin questions. So hit us up with any questions you might have that Steve can hopefully answer, and throw us a few hard ones, and we'll try and stump Stephen for the night. He's pretty good at these questions, but I think hopefully we can stump him with a couple and get back at to you if we need to in the future.
Wonderful, thanks, Michael. So yes, feel free to ask me some difficult questions or even some simple questions if you don't know much about our penguins. I do want to say a big welcome to all of our viewers here in Australia, the Water Watchers who tune in almost night after night, every night. I also want to say a big welcome to all of our viewers from the UK tuning in. Hopefully you guys are having a lovely time watching our penguins cross the beach here in Australia. We are down here on Phillip Island in Australia, also known as Malal for the Bunurong people who used to visit Phillip Island or visited Phillip Island for the last several thousand years. And the Bunurong are the traditional custodians of this land, and we'd like to pay our respects to the elders, both past, present, and emerging. So if you could let us know where you are viewing from tonight, that would be really interesting for us because we have viewers from all around the world. You can let us know what city you're from, or maybe the traditional custodians are of the land where you're viewing from. Maybe let us know what country you're viewing from, or even the city in the country you are viewing from. We all have Google, and it's interesting for us to go back into the comments and see whereabouts people are watching from. Now, these little penguins came in a little early tonight. I'm sure you've noticed a lovely group right in the middle of the screen just hanging around on these rocks. I managed to swap the camera over just as they reached the rocks, so they haven't been here too long, but these little penguins are on a journey home tonight. We call these the little penguins because they're the smallest penguins in the world. They're only about 33 centimeters tall, give or take a little bit, and they weigh roughly about a kilogram. So being that they are the smallest penguins in the world, they're also the only species of penguins in the world that come out at nighttime only. There's about 18 species of penguins or so in the world, And the other species, they'll come out day or night. It doesn't really matter to them when they come out. They don't have to worry about predators as they're crossing the beach or coming out of the ocean. But our little penguins, they're quite vulnerable to predation. We have some quite large birds of prey here in Australia. We've got the wedge-tailed eagles, we've got falcons and kites and harriers and lots of large raptor birds that love to eat small animals. So our penguins are cautious. They're waiting for the sun to set, they wait for it to get dark, and they wait for all of those big scary birds of prey to go to sleep for the night. Because once those birds have gone to sleep, they're not in danger from them anymore. So our penguins feel more comfortable the darker it gets. So we can tell you with a rough consistency what time the penguins will come out night after night. That's how I'm able to start this stream pretty much the moment that our penguins want to cross the beach. But being that they are wild animals, there is never any firm, hard time that they will come out. It's always give or take 15 minutes. Oh, fantastic. So we got this one early group that came in. I think Bill was over the radio saying there's about 80 or so penguins total that came across in that first group. I was talking when he mentioned it, so I didn't quite catch it too clearly, but it was a good large group. Quite a few of our penguins are on the Penguin Highway. Let's swap over to that one right now for you. There they go, waddling their way. We got a few large penguins in this group, or maybe just the one large penguin. He's a bit lower down. I'll try and keep him in front and center. He's desperately trying to keep up with the skinnier penguins. Now this penguin is a pre-molting penguin. Once a year, our penguins come home to molt their feathers, and that's what this fellow wants to do in the very near future. And in order for a penguin to molt their feathers, they're going to spend about 2.5 weeks on land. It's a long time to spend on land because they're not going to go into the ocean. They're not going to get any food from the water. So they're stuck on land for 2.5 weeks without access to food because they're changing all their feathers. They're losing all their old feathers. They're growing in their new feathers. So in order to survive, they're going to have to double their body weight, which is a really, there's a nice big group there. It's a really important for them to double their body weight to survive the 2.5 weeks without any food. They'll even slow down their metabolism, a bit like how a bear will hibernate over winter. They get a little lethargic. They won't be moving around too much. They want to conserve as much energy as they can. And some of our penguins, they've been fattening themselves up. Although Michael corrected me last night, it's not actually fat. It is soft muscle that our penguins are putting on out there. They're getting hitting the gym. They're putting on the muscle, coming home with a lot of extra weight, and that'll see them through. Muscle breaks down a lot more slowly than fat does, which really does help them to survive that 2.5 weeks without food. We didn't have a really good look at how many penguins might have been in this group, but we might ask Bill, who is our penguin counter tonight, what the number was of this group that was crossing. Now, Bill, he's been with us for a while, and there we go. Speak of the devil, he just mentioned it. Really good timing. Bill, thanks for that. He must be watching the live stream with you guys. He said there was 163 penguins in that group. How good is that? So really good numbers tonight. We had 80 in the first group, 160, almost double that in the second group, which is great to see. Now, as I was watching these penguins here on the rocks, I might throw it over to Michael and see if he's had any questions yet from our viewers.
Yeah, we've got that popular question on the number of penguins that across the beach last night, and I can give you that number now, and it was 1,884 penguins came across last night.
Wonderful. Yeah, so if you were tuning in last night, you might have seen us mentioning how many penguins crossed the night before. We always like to count our penguins every night, and as I said, Bill is our penguin counter tonight. We had Ebony, who was counting our penguins last night, and she counted 1,884, which is a lot. So here at Phillip Island, I work for the Phillip Island Nature Parks. Penguin Parade is part of the Phillip Island Nature Parks. We are a not-for-profit conservation organization, and we do a lot of work with research and education and conservation to help keep this a very healthy place for penguins to live. We are trying to provide a safe little bit of land here on the Summerlands Peninsula, the southwest corner of Phillip Island, keeping it safe for our penguins, letting them move in here, letting them have enough space to make a home of their own without the threat of invasive predation, maybe those invasive animals like the European fox, which was unfortunately brought over to Australia. It causes extreme amount of damage to our local wildlife. Foxes and feral cats both have a hand in pretty much every single small mammal extinction we've had here in Australia over the last couple of hundred years. And we've lost 10% of our small mammals in the last 200 years, which is quite a lot. We'll swap over to the highway camera for you. Sorry, trying to get these guys into focus. Couple of slow ones at the back. They got left behind by the group. We'll see if I can turn this camera around quickly. It's not a fast camera, this one, but that's all right. The penguins aren't too fast themselves.
How fast can they walk? Now that we're actually talking about walking.
Good question. So penguins, I say they're walking. They're really waddling, aren't they? How fast can a penguin waddle? I like one of my favorite rangers who works here in our research department. His name is Ross. He actually did a guest speaker a long time ago talking about it, and he was asked how fast do penguins walk, and he used the slow wedding march is what he described it as. So if you're walking down the aisle and you take a step and you pause, and you take a step and you pause, one step, pause, very slow walk. That's about how fast our penguins will waddle. A very slow little march down the aisle for them as they're heading on their journey home. In more scientific terms, I believe that's what, about 2 kilometers an hour?
Yeah, 2 to 3, I think.
2 to 3 kilometers an hour.
Some of them are quite quick. As you're walking up the hill, they almost keep up with you if you're, if you got little legs, maybe.
I just saw this little penguin do a barrel roll. So if you are watching the live stream and you want to hit the rewind button, you can see that penguin just flip over on its back. It's all right. Penguins can fall without hurting themselves. They're low to the ground. But you're right. Our penguins are able to move quite quickly. If they get scared, they'll really get down on their bellies and they will just gun it wherever they need to go to hide. Sometimes you'll see them on the beach, just up here. And if a bird flies overhead, it doesn't really matter if it's a bird of prey or not, but if a big bird flies over their head, maybe like a goose, which is a herbivore, doesn't attack our penguins, but it's a large bird. Any large bird's going to frighten our penguins. They will get down on their bellies and they will just run as fast as they can back into the ocean. I don't know what their top speed is there, but I'd have a hard time catching one full berries on that run. And they don't need to move too fastly to get home. They should be safe from predators, so they're taking that slow walk back to their journey home. Some of them might have to walk almost 2 kilometers to find their own burrow. Now, a lot of them are taking a bit of a rest here.
So what are they actually doing while they're there? Maybe let the UK viewers know what they're actually doing while they're standing around like this.
Yeah, let's try and zoom in. I'm going to try and get the camera to focus as best as I can. Oh, that's not working so well. Come on, camera. I believe in you. It's a bit of a finicky one. Our lighting's very low right now, so our camera has a hard time zooming in and focusing. There we go. That's a pretty good one. So you can see they got their bills, their beaks, and they're reaching around and they're kind of shaking their head over their feathers. They're preening themselves. And they do this to maintain really healthy coating of feathers. Their feathers are absolutely vital to a penguin's survival. They need their feathers to keep them waterproof. When a penguin is out on the ocean, the water will not actually touch their skin. They got this outer layer of the dark feathers on the back and the white feathers on the belly. That layer of feathers keeps the water away from their skin. It creates a little bubble of air. And the penguins, they have a downy layer of air on the inside of those downy layer of feathers that contains the air inside. So that makes our penguins float on top of the water. So if a penguin was out on the ocean and it fell asleep, which they like to do quite often, they'll stay on top of the water and they won't actually drown. They won't have to hold their breath. And how a penguin sleeps is they'll actually put their flippers out to the side to stop them rolling around in the waves. They'll tilt the head back a little bit and they'll fall asleep for 4 minutes or less. A little penguin power nap, if you will. And they'll do this sleep many times every day and night. They tend to sleep more at nighttime on the ocean when they can't see their fish so well, but they might sleep a little more often in daytime on land. It depends entirely on what their situation is and where they are. On land in the daytime, they can't leave their burrow. They have to stay hidden all day long or a bird of prey might get them. So they might sleep a little bit more in the daytime. Whereas out on the ocean, if they're asleep in the daytime, they're not going to catch any fish. So they're going to stay awake in the daytime, out on the ocean, catch as many fish as they can. And if they need to spend the night out on the ocean because they haven't caught enough fish to come home, they'll do that and they'll sleep a little more often overnight. All right.
So
now
I did see a good penguin fact that I hadn't really heard. So the preening, also they help each other, and there's a parasite that feeds on their oil. So they're actually helping get rid of the parasites from each other.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
So they're very social birds. You'll sometimes see them preening each other. Now, usually when they get to these rocks, they're mostly doing that self-love, but you might occasionally be able to spot one of the penguins preening another penguin. Sometimes they need a little helpful beak to get those little parasites off them. And they also have a hard time preening their own necks and their own heads. So it's nice to have a friendly neighbor. Even if you don't know who they are, they're still willing to help you out as long as you are willing to help them out. You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. Now, I did want to try and get another screen up on the live stream. It's our burrow camera. Last night I brought this up, and Bluey, who is our young chick that lives in this live web camera, web burrow, wasn't in there, and he's not in there again tonight. I think I left it too late. Now, Bluey is a chick that lives in the burrow that's just above me. He hatched there a while ago. I can't remember the day of his hatching, but he's growing up, getting ready to leave the burrow in the not too distant future. Now, I'm sure one of our wonderful Waddle watchers, our regulars who watches the stream every night, I'm sure you can provide a link to the web camera in the comments. You can click that link, and in the daytime, for our daytime, you can see Bluey inside the burrow waiting for mom and dad to come home. And Bluey's starting to lose a lot of his baby down feathers. He doesn't have long before he's out into the ocean making his own way in the world. Because our breeding season is winding down. The vast majority of our chicks have already left. Bluey's probably one of the last ones here at the Penguin Parade. We're going to be moving in to the molting season. I did see a little chick actually over here in the bushes to the left, but he's disappeared behind. I saw the little chick just had a little stripe of feathers around the neck, a little scarf around the neck. And that's right near the end of their molt. They'll be getting close to that 8 weeks of age at that point. So yeah, they'll be getting ready to go. We're not expecting any more babies to be, any more eggs to be laid at this time of year. No more eggs should be hatching. It's the wrong time of year for the babies. All the babies need to be getting out of the house so mom and dad can put on that weight. They after they raise their babies to the point where they fledge, they go out and they gorge themselves. They just go out and get massive. And it sounds like a good way to celebrate the kids leaving the nest. How are we going for questions,
yeah,
Michael?
We've got plenty of good questions coming up. So one, hang on. Whereabouts in Australia, or is it only Australia that these penguins live? Is there any other places in the world that these little blue penguins live?
Great question. So where do our penguins live? And the vast majority of our penguins live on the southern coast of Australia, but you can also find them around New Zealand and Tasmania as well, which is part of Australia. They don't tend to go too far north because you get too far north in Australia, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. And our penguins, they do not like the heat. They struggle with heat exhaustion in our summer months. Even here on Phillip Island, which is not a warm place in Australia, they can even suffer here if we get a string of days over 30, 35 degrees. So we'll start to be worrying about our penguins. We look for them to see if they're suffering from heat exhaustion. And if they are, our rangers do know how to take care of a heat exhausted penguin. It's pretty simple. You dunk them in a bucket of water. Get some nice cold water, pick up the penguin, pop it in there, let it cool down, and that should help solve their issues. But if there are penguins going too far north in Australia, they would never have any days under 35, except maybe in winter, and they'd be risking their lives in that kind of extreme temperatures. So you'll find them southern coast of Australia and around New Zealand. This penguin right here is a large one. Yeah, you're going down, you're having a nap. He's waddling 5 meters along. He gets tired, exhausted. He lies down. He is asleep. He'll wake up in a few minutes. He'll think, all right, time to get up. I got to make it home. Walk another 5 meters, fall down, have another sleep. There's no point in rushing. He's going to be on land for the next 2.5 weeks. He does not need to expend too much energy at one point to get home. He'll go when he is ready. I love watching these pre-molters heading home. There's nothing funnier than a really large penguin just struggling to make their way back to their burrows.
Struggling even to stand on their back legs.
Yeah, sometimes they
Sliding
get
on their stomachs.
they sometimes slide on their stomachs. They after a while they're like, I can't even be bothered standing up. I'm just gonna crawl my way back home. They'll kick themselves along with their feet. It is a lot of fun to watch. Have no fear. The penguin's not injured. He is perfectly fine. He or she, I'm not sure. They're perfectly fine. They'll make it back to their burrow. How fantastic of a view is that? All right, might see what's happening out on the main beach as well. Because while it is fun to look at a little pork chop up on that screen, there's a lot of penguins here on the beach. Well, it'll be interesting to see what kind of numbers we get tonight.
Yeah.
Now, I did mention I work for the Phillip Island Nature Parks, a not-for-profit conservation organization. We use the funding of all the ticket sales we get to help protect our penguins here. So you can see at the bottom of the screen, you might see a few heads that I'm accidentally putting on the shots from time to time. Those are our guests who are coming to see our penguins, and we encourage you, viewers, to come and see our penguins as well if you have not been. Even though you might be from the UK and unable to visit right now, we'd love to see you here in Australia at some point in the future when everything opens back up in the world. We'd hope to see you here at the Penguin Parade, where you can see these penguins live in person, get as close as those people are down there to these penguins. It's a pretty unique experience. But if you are unable to come visit us and you want to help protect our penguins in another way, we'd invite you to head over to our Penguin Foundation page. There should be a link in the description. Our Penguin Foundation is our charity organization. That organization works to fund a lot of the work we do here. They help to fund our wildlife clinic, where if we have an injured penguin, we'll take them to our wildlife clinic, where we have a bunch of rangers who can take really good care of them, nurse them back to health, and once they're ready to go back into the wild, they'll put them back on the beach where we found them from. They'll release them into the ocean, and they'll be on their merry way, catching as many fish as they can. So the Penguin Foundation, we have an Adopt a Penguin program. We also have an Adopt a Shearwater or Adopt a Koala, whatever animal you may want to help us to protect. You are welcome to adopt one of those animals symbolically. We are not going to be sending you a koala in the mail if you adopt one of our koalas, but the money that you do spend on that adoption will go to fund a lot of the work we do of protecting these animals. I can't believe how many are just sitting on these rocks. It looks like a little bit of a traffic jam here. They're too busy preening themselves, making themselves look beautiful, and making sure they get rid of any nasty things that they might have on them. So good to see this. Good to see them doing a lot of self-care. As they go on a journey home, they will take a few rests. As I can see our little molting penguin over here having a bit of a rest here. He hasn't moved yet. A few other penguins. Is that working? Oh, that's interesting. I have a little issues with my little camera. Trying to control it properly. It's not doing exactly what I say, but I'll get it working for you guys. There we go. I zoomed out when I meant to zoom in a little bit. So it hasn't moved too much, but yeah, it's lovely to see these guys heading on their journey home. Ooh. We used to have little baby penguins where that penguin around to the right has gone. Those babies have thoroughly fledged by now. They were interesting little the young ones. They tended to attack mom and dad quite viciously, or attack any single penguin they saw. As they waddled across their burrow, they would go out and attack and saying, "Mom, Dad, feed me!" And the vast majority of the penguins that they came across were not mom and dad, but they'd still go up to them and pester them for a bit of food. Alrighty, love to see another big group coming across the beach here. You can see some of them are just plowing their way through the mass of penguins that we have here. Now, when our penguins are in the ocean, a large group of penguins is called a raft of penguins. When they're out on the water and they're getting ready to come home on the waves, we call them a raft because they almost look like a little raft out on the water. But once they come onto land, that name doesn't really work anymore. So officially, they're just called a group of penguins on land, but unofficially, everybody calls a group of penguins on land a waddle of penguins. Which explains why our regular viewers have called themselves the Waddle Watchers. We love watching these groups coming home. It's a very apt description. Now, if you're at home, if you have kids at home watching our penguins waddling home, and you want to know how to walk like a penguin, a very important way to walk or waddle like a penguin is to not bend your knees. Now I'm going to zoom in and see if I can get these penguin legs here. That's not a bad one. So you can see you got a bunch of ankles right down at the bottom there. But if you were to x-ray a penguin, their knees would be located inside of their torso. And their knees are completely fused together. You cannot bend those knees if you're a penguin. So if you wanted to waddle like a penguin, try and walk without bending your knees. And I'll guarantee you the only way you're going to be able to effectively make your way around the room is by waddling just like a penguin.
So I've got a good question for you, Stephen.
Yeah.
So we've got a few boxes around. There's some man-made boxes, but how do penguins? What do penguins live in apart from these man-made boxes?
Yeah, well, I'll see if I can find a box. I got distracted by a wallaby here. Sorry. For our UK viewers who may not have seen a wallaby too much live. Oh, come on, camera. I know you can focus. Got a lovely wallaby here. So we do have those wooden boxes around. Those wooden boxes are home for our penguins. They're a small entryway, a big round opening, not round, big square opening at the back as the box opens up so a penguin can stand inside. And a natural penguin home is shaped almost like those boxes that we build for them. A natural penguin burrow would be a little hole under a bush underground. The penguins will dig out the sand, usually underneath a leafy bush like you can see on the screen here. They'll make a little burrow underneath, and that's what they'll call home. It's the same shape and size as one of our boxes. I'll see if I can find one here. This looks like one of our boxes right here. Want to see if this will focus, camera. There we go. So right next to this flapping penguin, you can see a little entryway with a bunch of white mess on the entrance.
It's trying to fly.
He's trying to fly, that penguin.
That's so cute.
You're not getting anywhere that way, buddy. You need to be in the ocean for that.
That's how they do it in the ocean, isn't it?
Yeah. So stretching his flippers. Ooh, a little bunny scared him back in the burrow. So you saw him jump into the burrow, and it is a bit taller at the back, so a penguin can stand inside that burrow. And that's what a natural penguin burrow would look like. Very similar shape. They're roughly about 1 meter deep. And back when we got a baby penguin right here. Good to show this one. And back when we had our penguin study group learning about our penguins, and we were measuring our penguins in their burrows, trying to see how much they weigh before we had these boxes. They were curious to know how far is a penguin burrow? How deep is a penguin burrow? And what the researchers found is a penguin burrow always ends up being about as deep as your arm. Doesn't really matter how tall you are. If you have gigantic troll arms that you can scratch your knees without bending over, and you reach into that burrow and you try and get a penguin out, you're going to be scratching that burrow and making it a little bit deeper as you scratch it out. So penguin burrows go as deep as about the arm that you can reach in. But if you're not having any arms reaching in, about 1 meter or so deep. Now this little penguin right here that I can see is a young chick, a bit of an older chick actually. He's got quite a bit of downy feathers around his back, really trying to get the camera to focus. You can see the adult feathers on his tail and just above his tail and just on his head. So he started losing the adult feathers around his head a little bit, just above his tail. They're going to be getting ready to get into the ocean in just a couple of weeks. I'd put that penguin at just over 6 weeks of age. And usually about 8 to 9 weeks of age is when they're ready to head into the water. Good to see a little baby. That's one of our younger chicks here in the colony. They'll, wow, there's a lot of penguins here on this beach. That's just fantastic. Now, Michael has just given me the signal that we've got about 5 minutes left. He did that a couple of minutes ago, so it might be 4 minutes left. We'll push it a little bit if we get lots of interesting penguins coming along. So if you have any last minute questions, please put them in the comments. I might throw over to Michael and see if we have one quick question that he can throw my way. Oh, he's looking. We've got a nice group coming out of the water right here. But while we're waiting for a question from Michael, you might be wondering, how long do our penguins take to come out of the ocean? We count our penguins for 50 minutes every night, and the count starts once the first 5 penguins cross the beach. And that's because for some reason you might get an early bird that crosses the beach by themselves. And that actually happened tonight before we started the live stream. I saw one penguin run across the beach into the sand dunes. I'm thinking, what was going on? Turns out there was a bit of a seal in the water behind them that I think frightened them onto land. It wasn't a seal that hunts our penguins. It was an Australian fur seal. They don't eat penguins. They don't hunt them. It was a juvenile Australian fur seal playing around in the waves, having a bit of fun, a bit of a laugh. But our penguins should naturally be afraid of seals. Doesn't matter if what type of seal it is. If you're taking too long to identify the species, you're probably done for if it's one of the types of seals that might try to eat you. So if a penguin sees a seal, they're going to run. And that one penguin ran onto land. We didn't start our count when that happened. It was a good 10, 15 minutes after that we actually saw a big group cross the beach.
I do have a good question.
Oh,
actually.
He's
Yes.
got a question for us.
So
Wonderful.
we keep talking about this molting, So we someone just wants you to explain what the molting is. I don't think we keep talking about it, but we keep forgetting to explain it. I think.
So once a year, our penguins have an annual molt, and a molt is when a bird loses feathers. And if you say you have a molting bird, sometimes if it's a pet bird, it might be an unhealthy thing due to stress. They might be losing some feathers. It's not something you really want. But for our penguins, it's absolutely vital. Once a year, they will grow in a brand new set of feathers. Penguins do not grow feathers throughout the year. They only do it once a year, every year of their life. So after the breeding season, our penguins are going to go grow in a brand new coat of feathers. And when they grow in all of those new feathers all at once, they push out all the old feathers. We call it a catastrophic molt because of how they lose all their feathers at the same time. And it takes 2.5 weeks to grow a feather from scratch. So they'll lose all their feathers, grow in the brand new coat, and that'll keep them waterproof for the next year. They've got to do a lot of maintenance work on their feathers. They've really got to take care of them because if they find a gap in their feathers early on after the molt, they're not going to grow any more feathers. They're going to have that little hole in their waterproof coating for the rest of the year. And that's a bit of a problem for our penguins to be losing too many feathers throughout the year. All right, we are at the end of our stream. That was a great last question to ask. I do want to thank you all for tuning in tonight. I would love for you to tune in tomorrow night where Sky will be hosting, I believe it's Michaela Strachan is tomorrow night, a bit of a conservationist in the UK. So we'd love to have you watching with us tomorrow night. Make sure you ask all your wonderful questions to Sky. She's a little more reserved about getting the difficult questions, but please tune in tomorrow night. Maybe Google some really difficult questions for her. She's not a big fan of them, but I like to throw her under the bus every so often. But please tune in tomorrow night. It's going to be another wonderful stream. We're going to be continuing these streams for the next little while, so we'd love to see you night after night. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a great night.
Good night.